The sun will be setting very shortly in Destiny 2. The fall, to be exact. And I know a lot of you have been wanting to know my thoughts on sunsetting in Destiny 2, and I do apologize that, as usual, I'm late to the party. I'm late to the share your thoughts on something that's been announced for months now, and I'm kind of glad that I waited till now, because with Season of Arrivals, some things have helped me understand my concerns a little bit more about sunsetting, or also the things that I understand why sunsetting is happening, and seeing other people's opinions, whether they're casual, average player, hardcore player, just understanding different opinions to formulate what I think about sunsetting inside of Destiny 2. So, to generalize what sunsetting is, for those who do not know, basically think of it as an expiration date on your legendary weapons and armor. There'll be a cutoff. A year worth of it being used in endgame activities, and then you can't infuse it any longer. You can't bring it up in light level. That doesn't mean it's absolutely useless. You can use it in like Crucible, where there's no light level advantages, or you could probably use it still in Patrol and such, I'm pretty sure. But when it comes to the endgame activities, you're going to have to get the new stuff. The stuff that you can use during those periods of time inside of Destiny 2. Now, a lot of people do not like this because it's scary, and I can understand why. Because when it comes to sunsetting, and I'll say this, for me personally, I'll just say this, I'm okay with sunsetting. But, and it's a big but, biggest of buts, that's dependent on what Bungie does with this. Because if they're just putting expiration dates on these weapons and armor just cuz, then I'm not for it. Because it's not a good fix, and it actually hinders more of the reason for players to grind. If it's just there, and nothing really changes on other things that matter. Listen, Bungie, I understand why you're doing this. Power creep. It connects to that. How are you going to make another mountaintop that's just as good as mountaintop or better when we already got mountaintop? So if you add sunsetting, then you don't feel afraid to tweak things, to make things cool and interesting. And if it's too overpowered, a little bit crazy in PvE, whatever. Because it will only be used during that period of time of a year span, and then we'll move on to something else because of the sunsetting. But here's the thing. I've already had concerns about sunsetting on a few things that could basically make it terrible for Destiny 2's future. But there's also things that could make it good. Like I said, power. Making us feel powerful. I talked about power leveling in Destiny 2 in a previous Chibi hour if you want to go check that out. But to kind of connect it with this one, the grind of power leveling is pointless. You essentially, when you're leveling up and getting your power level up, you don't feel like you're getting stronger. Instead, you just feel like you're unlocking new activities. I'm doing 750 activities in the Prestige Leviathan raid, and I'm still getting my Guardian killed within a few shots from the Cabal in there. And it's not like there's anything new added to the raid. It's the same raid with the same weapons, no random rolls to the weapons, so why would it still be difficult? It doesn't really make much sense to me. And power leveling is only one part of the grind. The other part is obviously trying to make builds, getting certain rolls on weapons. And when it comes to sunsetting, when you make it where it's condensed on that grind, where it's only useful for a year, you kind of scratch your head and go, but wouldn't this just make a lot of players not interested in playing if there's no fun factor? They've been nerfing a lot of different things, and I do not know why. They nerfed snipers. There's still stop mechanics in almost every single boss encounter in the game. Season of Rivals has done this, and they wonder why we don't use shotguns or close-range weaponry as optimal DPS to bosses or raid encounters and such, because they're just not as optimal. It's all about range in this game. And the nerf to legendary snipers just made the whole interest of using snipers in PvE not interesting. And they nerfed Outlaw and Rapid Hit recently, like perks about reloading, and people still are going to go for those reload perks because other perks are not as satisfying. Granted, some new perks that they added are pretty interesting, and I hope that they continue to try and make some interesting perks to make them fun. But nerfing things to not make us powerful with our weapons, where it just kind of feels like we have a little bit of a bump to them, doesn't feel good. I really do think that when it comes to sunsetting, we gotta look at fun factors and interesting means of our weapons, especially inside of PvE. Make things balanced for PvP, but in PvE, let us have some fun. Because if we're only going to be using these weapons for a year, why would we want to just go for the basic auto rifle with a rampage overflow perks to it? If it just feels the same, doesn't feel anything crazy like the previous weapons that I had before they were sunset. And that's the other thing I want to get into. I understand the concerns of sunsetting because of the fact that in Season of Arrivals, we got some reissued weapons. Gambit Reckoning weapons, for example. And people have already made statements saying, why do I have to regrind for this weapon again? Why do I? Some of the perks tied to it are the same perks that I have on the previous weapon. But the problem is that previous weapon is going to get sunset. But this version of it will not. But you can basically get the same rolls, but with some new ones, I think. And it just doesn't feel interesting. If anything, Bungie should update the previous of that weapon, give it that symbol, and allow the power level to go up to the Season Arrival version. But they don't do that. They want you to regrind for that weapon. And I just feel like that's just not the right move. New weapons, and they have added some new weapons with Season Arrival that are pretty cool. Like we got basically Dark Drinker and Boltcaster as legendary swords now, which is pretty awesome to grind for. Got a new pulse rifle that's pretty good. The bow and auto rifle's kind of meh. But there's some new things to go for. But when it comes to the old stuff, that's where I kind of understand why people are a bit concerned, where it would just be Bungie being like, well, let's just bring this forward. If the weapon does get some new perks tied to it to make it very crazy, like the brand new perks, then sure. But the new perks that we have are nothing to be crazy about, where they're OP or super duper amazing to use in a lot of different activities. It's just new stuff. New perks that make it feel different. So when it comes to the grind in the future, I do think that Bungie needs to make a bit of a turnaround and look at making our Guardian feel strong again. They have things like contest mode. They have things that hinder our power level already. You do a 750 activity at 10,060 power level, and it doesn't matter because there's a cutoff on where your power level gives you a benefit. It just doesn't feel right. So when it comes to our weapons, and even the armor mods, because I don't understand why we're getting our armor sunset when the mods themselves are going to be kind of thrown to the side. But if that means that they're sunsetting the armor so then they can mess with certain mods and make some crazy stuff, then sure. But when it comes to the power factor of weapons and armor, that needs to be a priority. Make us feel a reason to grind for these things and not care about it having an expiration date. Bungie, you need to understand that the mentality of our grind is now, is it worth it? Is it worth to go for this weapon? if it's already a season late or 2? Should I get this and enjoy this for 2 months? There needs to be a reason. Have some crazy stuff. Have some emphasis on fun and power. Sunsetting will not harm us if we have crazy things to play with. In Destiny 1, I'll never forget when I had Fatebringer and how amazing that weapon felt in PvE. It was super good. But after a while, they did a sunset of it technically as well. And then they brought it back with Etheric Light. And then after that, it was not useful. And then you had to wait till way later when they had the exotic version or the legendary version that during Age of Triumph. But that was just reissuing stuff. This ties into raid weapons. This ties into everything. Make them good. Raid weapons should have some crazy perks to them that make them good in PvE. Like intrinsic perks are a good idea, or intrinsic mods. Maybe mods that are only useful for PvE or PvP. Making some PvE perks crazy good that you can just slot into the weapon. Or intrinsic perks that are already tied to the weapon that you got from the raid that help with the raid, or can be used outside of it. Maybe the weapon itself does more damage to fallen enemies, making it very good and viable to use in PvE with fallen enemies in it. Either way, sunsetting, there's concerns, because it's valuing the time and investment of these weapons and armor. If people don't feel like it's valued, and you're not valuing their time and effort into getting these weapons, then what's the point of continuing the grind? That's kind of why I really think when it comes to sunsetting, I'm okay with it. Like, I'm okay just moving on to the next new thing, because that's something that I would be doing if my previous weapons were sunset. Because once I have a spare rations, I'm not going to use any other hand cannon then. So it's okay, that's just how I am. But if they're sunsetting, then it will actually emphasize me to actually use the other things that I'm okay with using. But it shouldn't be like that mentally. Like the only thing that comes through your mind. Oh, well, because I have to. Not, this thing is amazing, this is fun, I feel powerful. I feel like this is worth the time and investment. Those things matter. And that's what I've heard from casual players to hardcore players. People want to feel like their time is valued. This is not fully an MMO. If it was an MMO, power leveling, in my opinion, for Destiny's sake, not in regards of other games, we should be going through the campaign of the new expansion or seasons or whatever, get to a power level cap, or most through the power level cap from that alone, do a little bit of extra grinding, get to the power cap, and then the pinnacle grind is do whatever you want, but it doesn't have to wait till a weekly reset to keep it going. And then once you're at the pinnacle end where you're done, it's all about making builds, messing with mods, unlocking things, going for armor rolls, going for weapon rolls, doing what Destiny should feel like. Getting powerful, feeling good with how your Guardian is. And I've had some builds, but when I'm emphasizing just scrambling through a power level grind all the time, that's not fun. And of course, when things are being sunset, if I got through that power grind and then I'm finally at the random roll grind of weapons, I may not be interested. It's already been a certain amount of weeks of me messing with the other things. So that's kind of why I do understand every viewpoint. For me, I know it's inevitable. We're getting sunsetting, whether we like it or not. That's just a feature that Bungie wants to add. They may turn it around. You know, maybe they'll be like, this was a bad idea. Which, to be honest, I hope they don't do. Because I would much rather them be like, this was a success, because people are enjoying the new stuff so much that they don't need to go back into the past grab something from the vault that's been used for years, and they're much rather wanting to use the new things. That's what that needs to be done. Not just, we're putting an expiration date because reasons. So these pinnacle weapons that we're getting in the new expansion and seasons, I hope they are actually pinnacle and they feel amazing. And I do hope that they look at power and strength and feeling like a legend. Remember the whole become a legend thing? Become legend for Destiny? I don't feel like that sometimes. But I do want difficult stuff in the game. And I think having stuff like Grandmaster needs to be emphasized some more. Even doing that for like a raid, where there's a power cap. There's a contest mode with maybe some modifiers to either make it more difficult, but also maybe also beneficial to spice things up. There's a lot of other ideas that I have that I'll probably save for a different video that will go into many different categories of fun factors, because that's the main thing that people care about with Destiny is they want to have fun. They want to feel like their time is valued with the grind, and feel like they're powerful. That they got, that because they put in time and investment, they got somewhere where they're like, yes, this is great. But not make everything super duper easy. That's why I said the emphasis on Grandmaster kind of slipping into other areas of the game. And I'll talk more about that in a different video. But either way, for me, I'm okay with the idea of sunsetting. Because in my mind, I feel like Bungie has something in store that they know what they're doing. But at the same time, I know where it can fail. And that's kind of why I've already kind of seen that with the Season of Arrival's weapons. But this is a season, not an expansion where there's brand new tons of weapons with the new raids and so on. So we'll see. But that's my thoughts. Like the generalized, what I think of what sunsetting would be doing, what my concerns would be, all that. But either way, I want to know your thoughts in the comments down below about sunsetting. Like, do you agree with me, disagree? Do you have your own thoughts that you want to add into this conversation? Let me know. But either way, thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a great Chibi-tastic day, night, evening, wherever you are. And I'll see you in the next video. Chibi out.